that Wesley had a few moves ago, it's gone.
But I just want to point out how, just look at the practicality that Hikaru approaches these decisions with. After rook takes d6, he had a choice of many recaptures, and a lot of people would, try to find the perfect recapture, right? Or eliminate knight takes d6, or eliminate c takes d6. In a few seconds, he played queen d6. I don't think he calculated at all the consequences of rook d1 attacking the queen. He just knew, I need to keep time on the clock. This is probably the right decision. Let's not overthink it. Let's just make practical moves. And we talk about the tiny differences between great players, as all these players are, and very often it comes to tiny practical decisions. It might look like it's not an important thing, but it could make the difference in these types of games where it's just so high pressure, fast time control, and once you get low on time, that difference between, let's say, 2 minutes and 1 minute, it gets felt. And the difference between spending 30 seconds on a move or a minute on a move, it gets felt as well.
For sure, and the reason why I think white doesn't have an advantage anymore is now a4 is hanging, and that's why I pushed the pawn, but that closes down the queen side. So this rook eventually will like to go to d8 and trade pieces. Not now. If you play rook d8 too soon, thinking, I get rid of the rook on the open file, I'll just make a draw. No, this knight will come to c5 after just the swap of pieces. The knight goes back to d8. White is too active, and that's going to be bad news for black. So I feel like you need to be accurate here. Maybe rook c8 and pawn c5. This pawn is a backward pawn. That could be a way to get rid of one of your weaknesses.
Rook c8 is a slightly unnatural move because normally you don't put rooks behind pawns that haven't moved yet. You want to put them on open files. And especially if your opponent has a rook on open file, you want to trade them. But it does have a very clear idea to play c5. Probably a very good move. And I think Wesley might have to be, in the future, a little bit careful to make sure he doesn't overextend. He's still the one pressing for an advantage. But if at some point black were to get rook c8 and c5, the a5 pawn could be a strength or a weakness. That being said, I also don't see a huge problem with rook to d8. Because after trade and knight c5, queen d6, maybe black is just ready to trade off the knight with knight e6 next. But it could lead to some sort of endgames like queen to d3, taking everything, and black is not in time to get the moves he wants. He wants knight e6 and f6, because white has two threats, knight c5 and knight e5. And this actually looks a lot like a knight endgame we already saw in this match, but here black is losing a pawn, and most likely the game.
Right, so you want to trade everything, you can't get away with it. We did see actually the move rook c8 by Hikaru, and after rook d5, we saw a swap of knights on the c5 square. So black can take the d file. White's rook very active, hitting e5, hitting c6, maybe c4 next. But the material, even. The position, even. Both sides have their small pluses and minuses. They agreed on a draw. This game is over. A sixth consecutive draw. So both players, they're smiling, because what else can they do as they cannot separate themselves from one another?
Yeah, these guys are just so evenly matched. It's actually quite amazing to watch how they're not finding a way to make inroads into the opponent's weak spots. I mean, they keep trying to find some small ways to get a slightly better position, but even if they do,